Hi, it's Jim from Mavestar Observatory. So we've had another day at it today. We've managed to get a few of the problems that we was experiencing yesterday with the cloud chamber resolved. We replaced, it was the 12 volt bottom peltier that was letting us down, so we shifted that one out of the way, put a new one in. We then had a couple of problems with wires getting hot, and that was because we was drawing too much current from the one power pack that was running all of the 6 of the lower peltiers at 12 volts. So we took the power pack apart, soldered a few more wires on there to spread out that heat that was building up in the one wire through it obviously drawing too much current. We got that sorted in the end. Once we got that resolved, so we're at a situation now where we've got to build a suitable enclosure for all these different things like the radiator, the peltier array, and then we've got to get a little tank for the top. We've also got to put some LEDs around the peltier array. You know, I'm happy with the temperatures we're getting now. We're getting a constant 35 minus Celsius. Some of the better results I had today was about 38, so I'm sure that when we put the ethylene glycol in the water reservoir we'll be able to get that temperature down to around 40 degrees, but we don't really need it. It's overkill, but it would just work a lot better if we do keep the temperature as low as possible in there. Whilst we're on the subject of temperature, as soon as I had done what I could do with the cloud chamber, I then moved on to building our oxygen atmospheric sensor, and I've managed to complete this. The only thing I'll show you a bit later on with the screen running on serial so you can see what the sensor's putting out. It takes temperature, it takes barometric pressure, it also takes oxygen pressure, and it's the difference between the oxygen pressure and the barometric pressure that determines the amount of atmospheric oxygen in here. It's a very accurate oxygen sensor. A bit later on when I plug it in and I'll show you, if you just blow on the inlets of this sensor you change the oxygen content. That's because you're breathing out carbon dioxide, and of course the oxygen content in the sensor reduces as a result of that. So it's a very accurate oxygen sensor. One of the problems we had just putting this together was the sensor runs the data backwards and forwards from the sensor to the computer breakout board. It runs the data in a 3-volt format, whereas Arduino's, as you probably know, like a 5-volt format. So we had to buy this selector here, this 4-channel selector, which increases the voltage from 3 volts from the sensor to 5 volts on the other side, so that we can then send the voltage at the correct manner to the actual breakout board. So it's a little problem that we had to overcome. Probably cost another £6 for the actual chip, which converts the 3 volts to 5 volts, but we've got now a very accurate sensor, and now I know it's all working. I managed to find an easy program to run it on. I've got to change that program a little bit because obviously we're going to put a shield on there, and we'll put all the wires that are on that now onto this, and we'll be able to take recordings over a period of time. So we'll be able to then chart it and put it up to the website. And of course, I'll just say right now that the atmospheric content in this living room is standard. It's showing 20.64, which is a wet oxygen content, because there's a bit of humidity in here. It's not perfectly dry. If it was perfectly dry atmosphere in here, it'd be 20%. But because there's a little bit more humidity in there, we're getting a little slightly more higher reading. But that's average for indoors. What we're going to do with this sensor is, I don't know if you can see, there's an inlet and an outlet on the end of the sensor. And this sensor is designed to have air flowed over the sensor. So with a little micro pump, this little 3-volt air pump, we can pump air directly through the sensor and get a very accurate, fast reading. That's why this particular sensor is designed to have an in and outlet so you can actually force the air over the sensor, and in doing that you don't have to wait for the saturation content of the sensor to creep back down before you get another reading. So if you do, if you say you've got this device in your hand and you're carrying it around, if you do go into an environment where the oxygen's dropped dramatically in there, you know, this sensor will take samples very quickly because air's being forced over the sensor, and it'll give you an accurate reading. So let's plug it in. So basically all we've got to do to get this finished is put the SD card reader on it, change the program a little bit so that we get the data from the sensor with regards to the temperature, barometric pressure and oxygen pressure in millibars being recorded onto the SD card, and then we can process the data. So there's a little bit of work to do there. I'm sure there's probably less than an hour's work to get it finished. I'm just waiting on some 3mm pipe so I can put the pipe from the air pump to the actual sensor, and then another outlet pipe, you know, outside perhaps of a box that it's going to be contained in, and then we'll find a home for it in the observatory somewhere where we can keep a constant check on oxygen in the atmosphere. The reason why I think this is interesting, what we're doing here, is because if there's an increase of 200 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and NASA are showing us true results of satellite imaging showing that the Earth has actually gone greener over the recent years, then I think through that photosynthesis that's taking place, there should be more oxygen in the atmosphere. If plants are thriving more, then surely they are, by process of photosynthesizing, producing more oxygen as a result. So it'd be interesting to see if oxygen levels actually go up. So, and another thing I think could be interesting is if we can get a highly accurate CO2 sensor. And the reason for that is because what probably a lot of people aren't aware of is the actual content of CO2 in your living room, especially when there's a few people in there, goes up quite dramatically. Now, a lot of people are worrying about the fact that we've increased atmospheric CO2 up to 400 parts per million. But, you know, what a lot of people don't know is that if there's a couple of people in your living room, the atmospheric content is probably at 2,000 parts per million. And that's because when we breathe out, we exhale carbon dioxide. It's a natural process. So, you know, this could be used as an argument as to, you know, why you're worried so much about 400 parts per million. First of all, you know, all vegetation across the diverse range will thrive as a result of having more CO2. If you look at how these growing centres that are doing the, you know, a professional, process of growing mass products in these greenhouses actually inject more CO2 into that environment to make the plants thrive in there, or the vegetables thrive in there. So, you know, the only thing we could be doing by increasing, you know, CO2 up to the levels that we have is just creating a healthier environment for the plants, and in turn for ourselves as well with regards to oxygen content. I mean, we do burn, when you think about it, quite a lot of oxygen with all the equipment and machinery that we use and power plants that we, you know, burn fossil fuels with. We do consume a lot of oxygen. So I think it'd be well worth us, you know, at some point getting a CO2 atmospheric sensor together in the same manner as what we've got here, and, you know, we can just show you guys exactly these concentrations. I mean, again, in a car, you know, after 20 minutes it can go up to 40,000 parts per million in a car, the CO2 content. So why are you concerned so much? You know, why are these organisations so concerned about it just creeping up to 400 parts per million? Well, with that CO2 sensor, we can actually show you guys levels of CO2 at, you know, parts per million, and you know, we can, you know, just demonstrate, as well as talk about it, we can actually demonstrate the levels of CO2 and how harmless, you know, 400 parts per million is. So let's get on with it, and let's plug this in, and I'll show you what it looks like when it comes up on the serial monitor. So all the data that's coming off this now will get up on the screen, and then we'll have a little look at how we've got on with the cloud generators. So most importantly, guys, as you know now, we don't just talk about these things. We actually build the equipment to show and prove the actual state of which our environment is in with regards to the magnetic North Pole and its position, the magnetosphere strength, and globally at the moment we've got sensors in America, Australia, Hong Kong, and soon to be in other countries as well. And it's an independent research facility, this is, and it's the only way these days people are going to be informed, because if we're going to concentrate on listening to these organisations that are coming out with these fairy tales and lies, then we're only going to be misled. There's a lot of things I wanted to talk about in this video, but I don't want to consume too much of your time, guys, because I know you've got lives and you've got other things that you want to watch and do later on. But we do live in crazy times right now where people blatantly lie to us. It's just absolutely crazy. I was watching Tony Heller. He's a great researcher, and he's definitely slamming these climate alarmists with data and hard facts. And in his video yesterday, he came out and told people that even ex-members of NASA have been writing in large numbers to NASA saying, what is this and why aren't you recording the truth accurately, and what is all this about? You're giving NASA a very bad name. And there seems to be a concerted effort where money is concerned, especially with regards to CO2, to fleece people in these manners because it's taxable. They have destroyed complete industries through this nonsense of CO2, and they've changed the way in which we do business on the fabrication of a lie. And as a result of that, not one person has gone to prison, not one person has gone before a judge, and justice has gone undone. And that's the world in which we live in, and that's what happens when these organisations are infiltrated by just men and women that don't want to be honest, simply because they're either pressured into it, or it is from money aspects. They're bribed, in other words, to put their conscience in a closet. So anyhow, I won't go on. I'd like to talk more about that, but I'd rather just show you what we've got here today and what we've managed to get done, so I'll get on with that. So bear with me a minute. So we're looking at the raw data coming out of the sensor. As you can see, in line 1 we got the sensor, which is set to 0, so that's the number of the sensor. And then in this section here, 0201.9, we have the oxygen pressure in millibars, and then we have T plus 20, that's the temperature. Then we have the atmospheric pressure, and then, or barometric pressure, and then we have the actual oxygen content, which is 20.72 at the moment. Now, just to show you that the temperature on board the sensor is working, if I just hold the sensor, you should see it start to creep up on the bottom. So we're at 22.1 at the moment, 22.2, 22.3. I'm just holding it with my hand, so the sensor pressure, the sensor temperature is increasing, as you can see. So even by just a decimal point, you can see we're at 0.6 now, 22.6, 22.7. If I let it go, eventually it will start to come down. But I'll show you here in the fourth column, so where it's got the percentage mark and then the temperature 0.20, 020.69. So it's the actual content of oxygen is 20.7 at the moment. If I just breathe on the sensor, it should go down because I'm actually putting carbon dioxide into it. So as you can see, it went down to 18.47. Now it should start to come back up. 19.4, and it will return to 20.65 or something like that. So all we need to do now is add a date time stamp and record the data that we get, and we can find out whatever the atmospheric oxygen content is every 15 minutes. If we wanted to take a reading every 3 seconds, we could. I think that resolution is not required really. If we took it, every couple of hours a day and then added that to the website, I think that would be enough. Unless all of a sudden, oxygen levels started to rapidly decrease, then you could increase the resolution at any point in time simply by adding, or changing the program slightly. Instead of reading every thousandths of a millionth of second, you could read, at larger intervals if you wanted, or smaller. So there you go, guys. I'll just quickly show you where we're getting on with the cloud chamber. That's not far off finished now, guys. Bit of work on the actual housing for it, put some LEDs around it, and then high voltage power supply over the source, over our peltiers, and add some alcohol vapor, and we're away. And I think what would be a good experiment to do is actually try and locate some slightly radioactive materials and just show you the difference in particles. But what I am really looking forward to is showing you alpha particles, beta particles, gamma particles, and you can tell by the signature of the vapor trail which ones are which, and even muons as well. So there you go, we're back up to 20.1% oxygen. If we had the pump connected to the inlet on the sensor, it would have circulated fresh oxygen straight over the sensor, and it would have gone straight back up to 20.6 instantly. And in a couple of days we'll have that pump all set up and running as we described there. So let's go and have a look at the cloud chamber and see how we're getting on with that. The cloud generator. So we're getting nice temperatures now. What we've done different is I noticed some of these wires were getting hot because we was just using one live to power all 6 of the 12 volt peltiers at the bottom, and what I've done is I've run another 2 wires, so we're running 3 off one of the yellow wires that are providing 12 on the bottom array of peltiers, and again on the same on this side, so they've each got their independent power source now, and it's stopped the wires getting hot. So that's fine. A little teething problem that would have come along later on, that would have been. The other thing we've done is move the fan away from the peltiers. We haven't put the ethylene glycol in there, but I'll just show you the temperatures that we're managing to get now. So minus 36, 37. Across the range now. So it's a vast improvement. We're 10 degrees minus more than what we need to be, so we should get good results now with regards to seeing cosmic particles come through here. This one's still a little bit lazy. I did replace one of the peltiers on that stack. It does get up to minus 30 degrees. It's over 25 degrees, so we're well in the zone for seeing in the alcohol vapor good cosmic radiation. But the best result without the ethylene glycol today was about minus 38 degrees. But we can improve things a little bit more by simply increasing the speed of the fans to drop the temperature of the reservoir. We're getting plenty of air condensate on the peltiers now. In fact, my finger just stuck to that. So, I'm happy with the results. We've got it all wired up. Now what we've got to do is an array of LEDs around there. We've got to find a suitable tank, and then we've got to put all this equipment in a reasonable housing. and we're away. So the biggest part of the work is out of the way now. We've got to find a nice little tank that we can put the alcohol on. I've got a high power source which is about 25,000 volts, which we're going to put on a mesh across the top, because these cloud chambers work better when you include high voltage in there. So, you know, luckily enough I do have something similar to what would go in a stun gun. So we'll set that up on the above the tank, and you know, we'll see what sort of results we get. But at the moment I'm really happy with the level of temperatures that we're getting now on these peltiers, and I'm sure that we'll get good results with where we are right now with that. So yes guys, you know, we've covered a lot of ground in the last couple of days. We've managed to get a lot of work done on the cloud generator. We've built our highly accurate oxygen sensor so we can determine how much atmospheric oxygen is in the atmosphere. Tomorrow it's very likely a build day again for the 2 magnetometers that we need to send out to Brazil or South Australia, and then perhaps getting towards the weekend we'll get stuck into the muon detectors that are going to go out with that package in January. So there's a lot going on, and very shortly guys, this website that we've got here, poleshiftnews.com, is going to be a source for a lot of information that, you know, is currently on topic in, you know, the media right now. You know, how much CO2, how much oxygen, you know, what's the state of the magnetosphere, where's the magnetic pole. You know, all this information can be answered on this website. We've got the trimag data, we've got the magnetosphere data, we've got mavestar global data of intensity with regards to those the magnetometers that we've got in the field. We've got solar data, ice sheet data, we've got live radar, we've got the Schumann frequency, we've got earthquakes and volcanoes. A lot of work, guys, has gone into this, and that has all been made possible through just a few people, you know, that have chipped in a few bucks here and there. So, you know guys, you know, it needs to be continuously supported, and in doing that we can keep giving the information out to, you know, everybody. I know that genuinely some people can't afford to, you know, sponsor ourselves at the observatory, but if we get no funding at all, this will all come down like a deck of cards. And, you know, to this year, to date, we've added a lot of extra things to the observatory to make it more unique and, you know, more informative. And, you know, there's still a lot of work to do, guys. And, you know, it comes at a lot of cost and a great deal of time. I know it's easy when you see me showing you the built oxygen sensor, but, you know, there's time gone involved in the programming of that. There's time gone in actually building it. You know, you have to locate the parts. Some of these parts again come from multiple suppliers. There's a lot of work that gets put into all of this at the observatory, and the reason why the effort has been put in is because of a few people have actually, you know, chipped in a few quid and sponsored us. So, you know, the links are down there, guys, if you want to help us continue what we're doing. You know, our work's far from finished. And, you know, if we can show people actual data recorded on, you know, our equipment, then I think that sets it down as concrete and proof evidence that the situation which we record is the actual situation and not a complete fabrication of lies like we're seeing in the media. And if we can keep it supported privately like we have at the moment, crowdfunded, that means we're not going to be pressured by organisations that give us money to do the things we do at this observatory and, you know, manipulate the results. So it has to be kept, as far as I'm concerned, crowdfunded, and it has to be kept funded if we're going to continue, you know, doing what we're doing. So there's a link down there if you want to support us, and if you've not done it before, why not? There's a lot worse thing, guys, that you can do with a few bucks than support an observatory. And, you know, I know a lot of people think that there's 28,000 people there and he's raking it in left, right and centre. It doesn't even pay a wage for one person right now. I'm hoping that at some point it will cover at least a single person's wage. And, you know, later on, maybe a couple more. And we can start taking this observatory to the next level. You know, a lot of things have started at grassroots level. The very first computer came out of a shed, and I'm sure that, you know, to do that, it required a little bit of investment initially to start it off. So there is somewhere we can take all this, guys. But in order to do that, you know, a few people need to say and cross over that line and say, you know what, he puts an effort in, he deserves some support, and we're going to give it him. And, you know, the links are there, like I say, if you want to do that. But it isn't mandatory. But it is really essential that we do get some form of funding. So the links are there, guys. Anyhow, I'll say what I usually do. I'll catch up with you tomorrow, hopefully with a report on the magnetometers that we've built. And I'll say what I usually do. Have a great evening. And as always, bye for now.